Hey, everybody, welcome to the Intentional Optimist Guest Speaker Series. I am so excited to have my special guest today, Michelle Tillis Lederman. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
We are streaming live on LinkedIn and in my Facebook group. So I'm not sure where people are going to pop in, but we are excited to see who wants to come in for this conversation. There is the opportunity for you to make comments. I will see them. If you're on Facebook, you need to give Facebook permission to actually see who we're talking to. Otherwise, it's just going to say Facebook user. On LinkedIn, I can actually see who you are and what those comments are. And in a little while, we're going to ask you for some feedback. So I'm excited to see who's here. If you have not listened to last week's podcast episode of the Intentional Optimist Unconventional Leaders podcast, you've missed out on Michelle's conversation with me. You'll want to go back and hear that entire story. And I will definitely share a link for that episode in a little while. But I want to tell you, she is a connector creator and a connection creator. She's an author. And today, specifically, we're going to talk about one of her books called The Connector's Advantage. Why don't you give us an overview, Michelle, and tell us kind of a little bit about the book and a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Well, The Connector's Advantage actually started as the Connectors Club. But when I did the research and I had a premise of what I thought were some of the innate qualities of a connector. And in the research, I discovered that there was a very small differentiation between these qualities of a connector versus a non-connector. And what it changed my mindset on was that anybody can be a connector. We are not born this way. These are behaviors and attributes that we can learn. And so that's where it moved from being a club to the advantage of faster, easier, better results that anybody can access. And that was like a huge revelation for me and a joyous one because I know the success that I have achieved has all been through the relationships and the connections that I have made. I can think of every single success and I can tie it to an introduction or a relationship that has been built over time. And so the fact that I can teach these ideas and these mindsets and that other people can attain that same outcome, I'm thrilled.
Yeah. And that's, for somebody like me who thinks, I don't even know where to start, the idea that it's all teachable and that it's all attainable and that it doesn't have to be overwhelming and it can be completely, and we'll get to this in a minute too, that you are where you are in the connection spectrum and you can move around on that spectrum and figure out how to do it the best way. In life coaching and in speaking and training, we talk about mindset all the time. And my personal philosophy of intentional optimism has tenets by which we live, but that's all encompassed in a mindset. But the connector's advantage you discovered, and I love how you said it all comes down to this, anybody can learn, is all about having mindsets. And I love the way it's laid out in your book. When you open the table of contents, it's like, oh, I see where we're going here. And there are 7 mindsets of a connector. And I think that it would be very helpful to kind of give us an overview of what those mindsets are and how maybe each one helps us in our connecting ability.
Absolutely. So, and this is the opportunity for anybody who out there listening. If there's a mindset that you want me to dive deeper on, let us know in the comments, and Andrea will decide whether or not we hit that one. But there are 7 mindsets of a connector. And by the way, these are not linear. These are enablers. I would say these mindsets enable each other. So, connectors are open and accepting. They have a clear vision. They trust. They come from a place of abundance. They're social and curious. They're conscientious, and they have a generous spirit. And yes, I have to count them to make sure I get all 7.
I understand.
So you pick which one you want me to dive a little deeper on.
So because we don't have anybody that's commented just yet, how about you give us, when you say open and accepting, give me a slight definition of that.
So when we talk about open and accepting, we're usually thinking of open and accepting to others, and absolutely be open and accepting to others. But we also need to turn that to ourselves and be open and accepting of ourselves. And I think that's also where people struggle, because we get in our own heads and that holds us back. But if we accept what I call unique charms about ourselves.
Oh, I like that word.
So a unique charm is a quality about yourself that is kind of true to who you are, but it doesn't always work for you. Sometimes it might work against you. And I certainly have some of those qualities myself, as does my husband. And I'm always joking. My husband, I married him because of his sense of humor. It is a wonderful sense of humor. He keeps me laughing after 17 years of marriage. And it is definitely one of his unique charms because it's a wonderful trait. It also has moments where he uses humor and it's not exactly the right time.
I don't know anybody like that.
For those who watch Friends now or in the reruns, Chandler might be a good correlation.
Okay.
So again, it's one of those unique charms of understanding, yes, this is who I am. For me, it is my talkativeness. I have a big mouth and I use it often. And sometimes I need to learn to shut up, and understand that when we accept who we are and our unique charms, we can learn how to flex and adapt temporarily, momentarily, adjusting our style to enable better connections to form.
I love that. We talk a lot about the first person that you can lead or the first person you need to change is the person in the mirror, the human in the mirror. And most of the
That's the
time,
only person. I'm sorry to cut you off because I think that's such an important statement.
Yes.
You can only impact your own behavior.
Right.
And you might influence others,
Right.
but you only have control over your own. And if you walk away from a situation feeling good about how you interacted, how you presented yourself, that's all you can do. And you have to give time for other people to make their own choices about their reactions.
It's very empowering to hear that. Yeah. So my podcast that came out yesterday, the clear vision concept was something that resonated for me based on some things that I was walking through in my business and doing in my business. And so I already waxed eloquent on like having a clear vision and what that means and how the who, the what, the how, and that kind of thing. Is that something that people ask you a lot? What is a clear vision?
So people struggle with this and I will share, I do too.
Okay. We all do.
Right. I remember when I applied for business school and they're like, what do you want to do in 5 to 10 years? And I was like, well, maybe this and maybe that and maybe the other thing. And I didn't get in the first time I applied because they wanted that clear vision.
Yeah.
And the truth is that you can say whatever you want to say on those applications. And I did, and I got in the next time. And that I don't remember what I said and I don't remember where I was 5 years after. But the idea of having some clarity, it doesn't have to be the 5-year plan or the 10-year plan because that feels way too big. But I want you to think about what's the one thing I'm focused on right now? What's the one thing I'm working on right now? And so when my book came out, the first thought was, I want to get 100 reviews on Amazon. Right? I just launched my LinkedIn newsletter. I know I shared that with you on the episode.
Yes, actually, here, we're going to put this up here. And I put it in the comments for both LinkedIn and Facebook. If you want to subscribe to your newsletter, it is there. So go ahead.
So wonderful. So I think I launched just 2 weeks ago or so, and my goal was to hit 1,000 subscribers in 1 week, and we hit it in 4 days. And so the idea of having clarity, even if it's a small goal and something so concrete like that, when you share it, when you talk about it, you increase the odds of making it happen.
Right.
Because, and I'm going to jump to another mindset, which is the generous spirit. And to have a generous spirit is to give because you can and because you want to and without expectation of anything in return. It is not a reciprocity mindset. It is a pay it forward and a giving mindset. And when you have that, when you put that forth, you actually do engender that kindness and that generosity in others. I love the research that shows when people see kindness, they are more likely to act upon that kindness. So I love the media is doing a lot more stories about kindness because we need to see it more. And then we model it ourselves. So when you are being giving to somebody else, they do innately want to add value and be kind and give back. And so if you don't have a clear vision to share, well, hey, what I'm working on right now is, now my goal is 2,000 subscribers on my newsletter, right? Or it could be something small like that. Or, it could be, I would love for people do book clubs with my book.
Mm.
And I have a couple of people who have started doing book clubs, and I've been so excited. I said, I'll come on and I'll do a live Q&A with you if you get like a certain number of people. And so these small little goals, it is not I
We
want to be.
may take you up on that.
So when we think about clear vision, just think about the ability to answer the question, how can I help you? Because remember how good it feels when you can help somebody else?
Yeah.
You want to be able to give somebody else that ability to feel valuable and to give back, because it doesn't feel good when you can't add value yourself. And it doesn't have to be to you, right?
Right.
We're not talking about the reciprocity. Maybe you can add value to somebody else. And I actually just had this happen yesterday where somebody who has a kind of the honor project is, I think, what he calls it, and it's to help veterans. And
Mm.
I changed the angle of my camera, which you can't really see. But the book right up here is called Heroes Get Hired. And I wrote a whole book that's free for veterans on how to help them reintegrate into the civilian workplace. And he's like, I didn't know that. And so,
Mm.
it's just a joy to be able to feel like, hey, I might not be able to give to the guy who asked me, but I can give to the people who he cares about.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, the whole concept of the generous spirit, because that ties into your believing in abundance. Because if you believe in abundance, then you're going to be generous because you know there's enough out there, right?
Well, that's actually what I mean by they enable each other.
Okay.
It's
Good word. Yeah.
really hard to have a generous spirit if you don't come from that place of abundance.
Yeah.
And, I didn't grow up with a mindset of abundance. This was probably the hardest one for me personally to adopt, because scarcity is real.
Yeah.
And I feel for everyone out there that has real scarcity right now, whether it is of time, of money, of whatever it is that you feel is scarce, of clients, of work, or whatever. Because the realness and the, I call it tangible feelings of scarcity, it is a really hard shift to make.
Yeah.
And abundance is not about a Pollyanna attitude. It's not everything's coming up roses and daffodils. I don't know if anybody will get that reference.
I got it.
Okay. It's before my time too, but I always heard my mother saying roses and daffodils. But it's the idea of, even though things might not be great right now, it's the possibility of them being better than they are.
Right.
And not even that's just the possibility, the probability and the belief that you can make that happen or influence that happening.
So now the one that I really want to talk about is trust.
So why is that so important to you?
Because my nature is to remain loyal to and to expect loyalty from others. And then when that is broken, when there is a betrayal, I find it hard to trust. So then whenever somebody just wants to help me, and this has been, this is something I'm working through. So this is the one that just really resonated for me. Is whenever somebody wants to help me out of the generosity of their spirit, out of an abundance mindset, out of having a clear vision. Like, I have a health coach who helps me and charges me nothing. I have a friend who does my podcast. It's like there's just on. And I just think, why are these people helping me? Right.
Yeah.
And so it's the trust issue that I've recognized is so big for me. So I'm working on that, but I really want to hear your perspective on that. And what are maybe some tips? Because I know I'm not the only one. We come from that good old Protestant work ethic where I do in order to get, right? And that's, I guess, related to scarcity. But at the same time, if I don't feel like I can give something back, then how can I take?
So when you come from, we're going to hear how these are all connected now.
Yeah.
When you come from a generous spirit and you give, and you know that you have this giving mindset, it gives you permission to receive, even if it's not that direct. I hate the phrase quid pro quo, right?
Well, but but we understand it, right? It helps us understand it.
So when you are doing these things and infusing these behaviors in, you have to give yourself that permission to receive. Now, there's two places that people tend towards with trust, and I call them mom and dad. Because my mom had the attitude of trust, and she literally told me this: trust until somebody gives you a reason not to, Michelle. She had just this trusting openness.
And I like to say that's who I am. But I think I've ended up where Dad is about to be.
Yeah. So Dad, who grew up with a lot of scarcity, I mean, his first bed was the bottom drawer of a dresser.
Mm,
And as the youngest of three brothers with one pair of socks to share, he often had cold feet.
mm,
So, I mean, real scarcity. And, he worked at a tire store, like a car dealer, and they used to put grooves in the tires to make them look more new than they really were. Like, I mean,
yeah.
so he always said, figure out how somebody can cheat you so that you can figure out how they can't.
Oh, bless his heart.
But that's how he was raised. Like there was always a, how do you get around this? How do you trick somebody? How do you get, and so I had these two influences in my life. And,
Yeah.
it's a struggle to make a choice about trust. And I lean towards my mother. And I trust until somebody gives me a reason not to, because I believe you need to give trust to get trust.
Mhm.
When you give trust, you are really putting forth one of what I call the 4 pillars of trust, which is vulnerability.
Yeah.
When you are vulnerable, you are giving a gift to somebody of trust. There's that
Yeah.
generous spirit, right? Trusting is being generous and being open and being accepting and coming from a place of abundance. It's kind of like you need all of them to get to this one.
Yeah.
And so, the just to share the other pillars of trust, we have authenticity, right? Which again ties into that open and accepting of ourselves,
Mhm.
showing who we really are. Vulnerability,
Mhm.
which is not about weakness, it's about openness,
Yeah.
right? It's about sharing. And I always say vulnerability leads to credibility.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The third is transparency. And the fourth is consistency. So the challenge is that all of our micro actions on a daily basis either contribute to building trust or to breaking it.
Mhm.
And I do this activity in my training where I actually have 4 groups, and one of them defines trust, and the other one does trust builders, trust breakers, and restoring trust. And the first time I did this, I did it at a university. So I had a lot of academics there.
Uh-huh.
And they had this, if you go to page 100 of my book, you can read the definition that they gave. It was really complex. But the end of the definition was trust is fluid. And I
Oh,
love that because that's the truth behind trust is you're kind of given to the bank or taken out of the bank. And there's a fluidity to it.
I like that. Maybe that's the piece that's been hard for me, right? It's either I'm supposed to trust or not, right? Can I trust you or can I not? And so wanting to be or being more naturally in mom's camp of I trust you until you aren't worthy of it or you break it. But feeling like I've got a lot over in dad's camp. It's like, but you've cheated me so many times, right? Um, that actually explains maybe some of those being almost on a spectrum of being able to trust.
Yeah, and you're actually tapping into one of the other mindsets that we haven't talked about, which is conscientiousness,
Okay.
right? And so when you are conscientious, it actually will also enable trust because um, when we are conscientious, we really get clear on what we're willing to say yes to and what we're willing to say no to.
Mm,
And we create boundaries. And honestly, this is really a generous spirit as well, because a generous spirit also, just like open and accepting, a generous spirit needs to look inward. And how can I be generous to myself? And part of that is learning how to say no and creating boundaries of you know the I guess criteria with which you say yes or no.
oh, that's a good way to say it.
And so if you are feeling like you've cheated me or I don't know if I trust you, you can create boundaries around how much you're willing to give or, where you are. But yes, it's a spectrum, just as the
Yeah.
the level of connectors, and I know your mind is going there next.
Yeah. Well, but that's okay. Go ahead and finish out your thought.
But all of these mindsets it's not black and white. It's, we are on a spectrum of growing and building and bringing these attributes and behaviors and mindsets into our being and into our interactions. And just because we don't do it perfectly one time doesn't mean we don't have them within us.
Yeah. That's really good. Now, all of these things that we've been talking about, are these all in the Connector's Advantage, or are we referencing things from other books?
Everything is in the connector's advantage. And just, to share my first book, The 11 Laws of Likability, it really is some foundational concepts. And so I actually summarize the whole book in chapter 2 so that you have those concepts
Great.
to jump off of.
Excellent. And I did want to share too that you do this really special thing with your like a buy one get one, right? It's not usually when you see the BOGO logo, it means I'm going into Payless and I'm going to buy one get one shoe, right? But you take that and do a little bit different.
It's buy one, gift one.
I love that.
And, it's still, you're getting like 2 books for, what do they do? Buy one, get one 50% off. It's kind of a similar pricing model. But the idea is not the buy one, get one. It's to buy one, give one. And people always say, I don't know how to reach out or what purpose to reach out for. Well, everybody likes to hear when they're getting a gift. So I sign the books and I can personalize that dedication for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can hand deliver that book and give that gift of connection. And it creates a conversation.
I really like that. And, so many people like to give, like in my husband's family, when we do Christmas lists, it's everybody's list has at least 2 or 3 books on it. And I find that to be fascinating and that this is actually a really good way to kind of do that and to start the conversation, like you said, start a conversation and to move forward with that. I've gone ahead and put the link at the bottom here and it is in both the LinkedIn show notes and is it wrong?
Yes, I think you have the wrong link. What the link is that you have up is actually my gift pack, which is great. You can go there too. I give lots of freebies away, but that is not the BOGO offer. So I am going to attempt right now to put it into the comments. Can I leave a comment? How do I?
You can. There's an internal comment. It's like a private chat over there on the side.
Okay, there we go. That's the
this is what
link.
we
You can
do
pull it right from there.
live streaming, folks. So I'll just copy and go back over to the banners and we'll say edit this. Okay. So while we're putting this in here, the other thing I shared with you is that I said, can I tell them that it's on Kindle Unlimited as well? So if you're a Kindle user and you're like, oh, I kind of want to read this, but I want to read it right now. Well, it's included in Kindle Unlimited. I don't know how I'm not sure exactly how they pick which books are in there, but right now it is in there, and that can give you an idea. And then instead of when you do buy one get one, or buy one give one, you can buy and give them both, right? I mean, because you've already read it, so and you've understand the beauty of it and how helpful it is.
Well, there are some activities that even if you do it on Kindle Unlimited, you can't write through some of the activities in there. So there is something nice about the physical book. But that might just be me. I love a physical book.
Yeah, me too. So the last thing I want to talk about is if you're somebody who just kind of says, I need some answers right now. Where do I stand? You also have a levels of connection quiz. It's actually called a connector quiz. And I actually took that this morning and I'd like to share that as well. It is really interesting because I assume as like a DISC consultant, I'm a this, and that's what I am, or Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, but it's a little different with a connector. These are not individual personality types of connectors. Explain to us what they are.
So, and I'm going to ask you after I do this to tell us where you landed on the quiz.
Bet we're going to discuss it.
This was another thing that came out of it. And in, doing some of the research, I realized that we are on a spectrum. You're not a non-connector or a connector, which is kind of what the original premise was. It's that there's a spectrum. And non-connectors are people who don't even believe in the value of relationship. I mean, there's very few of those out there, and I'm sure nobody listening today is, because you are connected just because you're on these platforms.
Right.
So what you might be is what's called an emerging connector. And this is somebody who believes in the value, but doesn't exactly know how to, infuse these things in, and not tapping in, but they're getting their toe in the water. Mm. Now, as we move up the spectrum, there's 2 levers we can pull. And when we move from emerging to responsive connector, we are thinking about the fact that people are now reaching out to us. They're asking us for introductions. They're asking us for assistance, and we are responding to them. That's a responsive connector. That's great. You're in the mix. Mm. But if you want to continue to climb, you want to be initiating as well. So that first lever is responsive versus initiation. Mm-hmm. So you want to start thinking about, okay, who do I know that they might meet? Let me make the suggestion. Let me initiate. whether it is giving or receiving, that is part of the initiation. And so once you are both giving and receiving those ideas, those suggestions, being responsive, you are now an acting connector. And that is a great goal for, most of the population out there. Getting to that acting place of a connector means you are infusing these mindsets regularly. You're both initiating and responding. What you haven't yet done is pull the other lever, which is breadth and depth. So when we go deep, and what I mean by that is I know everybody in blank, right? So I once went and did a TV show and they were talking about, I want to introduce you to so-and-so. She knows everyone in media. Right? That's a niche connector. Everyone in media.
You know everyone.
Yeah. If you are in real estate law in New Jersey, you know my sister. She is not a lawyer, but you know my sister because she has a firm that has almost every law firm in New Jersey as a client. So she is a niche connector. Real estate law, New Jersey, foreclosure world, you know my sister. So deep connections in an industry, in a geography, in a job function, right? I know everybody in HR, or I know everybody in this company, or whatever it might be. That's a niche.
Okay.
When we go broad, up and down the ladder, across industry, across geography, across demography, across educational levels, across all of those things that you can think about, the person who always goes, I got a guy. There's my Jersey. I
was going to say, why do they always sound like they're from Jersey?
Well, I am. That is when you are a super connector, right? So that you have that breadth, depth, right? You are initiating, you're responding, you're a super connector. And if you go past your country's borders, you're a global super connector or a global niche connector. So it is a spectrum, and these are the levers that you can pull. So where did you land?
Where do you think I landed?
I would say that you might be a niche connector.
Oh, thank you. I'm flattered. I answered the questions and landed at active. And I think part of that, or acting, excuse me. And I think based on your definition, I think part of that is because one of the questions asked me if somebody asks for an introduction to another person, and I think that it's going to be a great connection for this other person, I do it. But I also stand as a barrier if I think that's not going to be a good connection for the person they're asking to be introduced to. I'm like, no, I don't think so. Now, maybe that's not really my place, but
these are your boundaries, right?
Those are my boundaries.
But, what I would say is there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And I think that people will really appreciate when you do make an introduction that is a very thoughtful one. Right. And I think that goes to your reputation. I am connected to thousands of people on LinkedIn, and I kind of put it out there that if you send me a personal note on LinkedIn, I will accept the connection request. Now, that has gotten me into a little bit of trouble with all the people who send those, spam ones, and I know I'm going to get spammed, but, and then somebody will say, hey, do you know so-and-so? And I'll say, I don't. However, I will send a note, but I'm not going to send a note saying, I know this person so well, and you would benefit from meeting them. Right. I'm going to send a note saying, and I've done this person reached out. I don't know them. This is why they're interested in connecting. We are a connection, and, we don't know each other that well either, but I said I would reach out to see if you'd be open to a conversation.
Right. Now that I have done as well. So maybe I'm not maybe it's something else that's keeping me in the acting category on your questions, but I actually feel I'm more of a global because of the different types of work that I've done, as well as the fact that I literally am making notes. I'm supposed to contact this girl here. I'm supposed to tell her they're both in Africa and I need to connect them. One's on one side and one's on the other, but their interests are very similar. And so the mindset shift for me, though, on that idea was that it is really more of a level, and that you can continue to build and grow rather than saying, oh, that's just what I am.
Yeah. And here's the thing. You probably do have some global access and some global tendencies, and maybe you just aren't giving yourself enough credit.
Right.
So what I would say is, you know what? I'm a global super connector. You might also be a global super connector, but my global reach might be a little bit bigger. Again, spectrum.
Well, you've been doing it more intentionally longer than I have too. And what's interesting is that I find my Facebook to be, I will accept a friend from almost anybody. I do take a look every once in a while to see, because I get those spammy things too. But so my LinkedIn is a little bit more curated, but I also haven't been very active on it. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. But my Facebook group is another example of that. I want it to be for all women or anyone who identifies female. And for me, I used to say, well, do they believe the same thing I do? And it's like, well, how is that open and accepting, Andrea? It's like, no, come on in. You answer the questions, you can come on in. So before we go ahead.
I was going to say, you're going to close us out in a second, but I think
Yeah.
you're going to close out with what you just inspired for me, which is diversity of thought.
Go for it. Because what I want to make sure people understand is that we don't just connect with those that we like, and we don't just connect with people that that resonate with us, right?
So the power of being a connector is about having access to those different viewpoints and to those different places, people, skill sets, ideas. And the last part of my book is all about expanding and diversifying your connections, because whether it's professional, companies that have a diverse workforce have better decision making, better problem solving, faster decision making, more innovation, they're more creative. Like, you need all of these different views. And if we keep ourselves so isolated, we don't expand our own thinking and broaden our possibilities. And honestly, that's not the advantage of being a connector.
Yeah. I mean, the advantage of being a connector is not about just making things better for me. The whole point is becoming somebody who, in a greater, like in community, does all of that together. I've put the link up. It's on the screen. It's a little bit wacky, but I also include that. If you look at any of my social media, you're going to find Michelle's episode it's episode 76 on our podcast of The Intentional Optimist, Unconventional Leaders. You can hear her story and how she landed where she is today. A little bit of how she got to these conclusions and the leader that she is. And if you love what she's doing, you can also get her newsletter, which is Connected Leadership. I'll put that one more time here. It's in the comments on LinkedIn and in the Facebook group. So, Michelle, is there anything else you want to just close out with before we sign off here today?
Just keep connecting.
Well, and part of that is, when we think about our neurons, they fire and they go off into something hoping they're going to connect with the next neuron. And if we don't, then our body doesn't function. And if we think about that in a community, if we don't actually reach out and receive, then we can't do that either. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this has been a real treat. For anybody in the Facebook group, or if you did not catch all of this live, you can join my Facebook group if you identify female, and it will be in the guides section. So that may be an incentive for you to come on over to the Intentional Optimist group. Otherwise, have a fabulous day. Thanks so much. See you later.